It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm a Darden alum of '04, so it's just great to be back in my home turf and to see this interest in one of the most critical issues of our time. I'm joined by three really distinguished panelists who I will allow to introduce themselves because I certainly couldn't do it. But I'd love if you could just go down the line and share who you are, what you do for your organization, and then what are the big sustainability and climate issues that you're tackling and moving forward. So Chris, we'll start with you.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning. So I am the Director of Corporate Sustainability at WestRock. For those of you who don't know us, we're a packaging solutions provider, and we make all types of paper packaging. We make automated packaging machines. We have a recycling business, a distribution business. And often I think the easiest thing to do is to sort of, ask everybody in the room, so who buys online products? Okay, so you've used some of our corrugated boxes. Who eats pizza? You've used some of our boxes. Who uses either beverage, either you like soft drinks or you like beer? Yeah, so we make all of those different things. Yeah, Scott's saying I do too. But we're a business-to-business company, and so not many people know our name, but we're in just about everything you can think of in terms of paper packaging. A little bit about myself. So I'm a forester. I started out on the land management side, worked on different parts of the business over the course of the last 20 plus years. Worked for many different companies, been through a couple of mergers. And so the last 10 years of my career have been really focused heavily on sustainability, the natural resource side as well as the greenhouse gas, the water, et cetera. And for us, some of the big challenges we're facing right now, obviously around climate. How do we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? Some of the questions around water, some of the things that we're also focused with on customers are around substrate substitution. So how to get plastics out of the packaging.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
My turn. Hey guys, great to be here. For those of you that participated last year, I was able to join Climate Cap then as well and had a fantastic opportunity, so came back again for another round to be able to join you. With Nike, hopefully a few of you in the room have had the experience to interact with our brands of Nike, Jordan, or Converse. Nike today is the largest seller of athletic footwear and apparel. We sell through Nike-owned retail, direct digital platforms, as well as a network of different regional accounts. I sit in a group that's called Global Sourcing and Manufacturing. I'm part of an embedded sustainability organization of professionals that are about 120, 130 folks that are dedicated to improving labor, health, safety, and environmental excellence within our extended supply chain. For me, at Nike in my career, I had the opportunity to be at Nike for 5 years now. I spent 17 years at Coca-Cola before Nike, and then 3 years consulting for EPA. The opportunity at Nike right now with working in the extended supply chain is that about 80 to 90% of our carbon impact is in that extended supply chain. And Nike has said that the biggest threat to the planet is climate change, and in turn, the biggest threat to sport is climate change. And through a science-based climate target that's focused on reducing the absolute emission impacts of our owned and operated operations, or our scope 1 and 2, of around 65%. And then we have a commitment of a 30% absolute emissions reduction, or over 30% absolute emissions reduction within scope 3. That's really focused on that extended supply chain that I cover.
Great. Thanks. Virginia.
Great. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here. I'm actually a Darden alumni of 2016, so it's a huge honor to sit here with you guys today and see the interest in sustainability. My role focuses on sustainability along our supply chain. Basically, I lead our climate strategy on how we're going to decarbonize our footprint across our value chain. Those of you who are not familiar with AB InBev, we are the world's largest brewer. We own brands like Budweiser, Stella Artois, Michelob Ultra, and then Corona in other markets different from the US. And as you know, this is a very critical issue for us. So if you think about beer, and I'm sure a lot of people raised their hands when they were asked if they drink beer, beer is a natural product. It's very different from a lot of consumer products because the main ingredients are water, barley, hops, and yeast, right? So when you think about, sometimes we use rice, adjuncts, but they're also natural ingredients. So when you think about this, if we want to be here, we want to survive, and we want to be a beer company for the next 100 years, we need to actually take care of our environment. So sustainability is not just part of the business, it is our business. Like we recognize the impact that climate change can have on our business. And just like it was just mentioned, our value chain represents about 80% of our carbon footprint. So I focus on how are we going to achieve that 25% reduction by 2025, which is our science-based target, and then how are we going to reduce in absolute terms by 35% as well in that same time frame. So basically, that's what I focus on.
Great. So one of the things, this is a panel, of course, about innovation in supply chain and how we create products that our customers really want. Scott, in prep for this discussion, we spent some time talking about Nike's business model and trying to drive change on the ground when you aren't really in direct control of what's happening on the ground. So can you set a little context for the audience and then share what you see are challenges and opportunities in that arena?
Yeah, so virtually all of our product and materials are made by third-party contracted manufacturers, right? With the exception, actually, of our airbag technology, which we do manufacture, and given that airbags are in about 50% of our products, that's a pretty big area of our individual business as well. So I do get this question a lot around how do we engage and motivate and drive progress within companies that we don't directly own? And I think it really comes down to maybe 4 different things. Yeah. One is that we call our third-party contractors inclusive our strategic manufacturing partners, and it's a true partnership that we're engaged with them. It has moved beyond just a transactional relationship to truly a strategic relationship that's been forged over 30, 40, in some cases 50 years. So there's been a real consolidation within our supply chain focused on those strategic partners that can grow and share our values in areas like sustainability. Second has been around approaching them with very clear business cases that rests on a focus of not just doing something because it's good for the planet, but doing something because it sustains our shared license to operate, it drives resiliency within the supply chain, or it unlocks future growth in a planet that does have boundaries or resource constraints. Third, we've been working with these partners around collaborative target setting. We're actually finishing up our 2020 targets right now, and we do 5-year target planning. So we're in the process of setting the next round of targets. Over the last year, we've been engaged directly with our largest partners around committing what those should be, and so that it isn't just the brand saying, here's where we need to go, but collectively understanding, here's where we need to be advancing the work together. And we've actually recently kicked off with our largest strategic partners a council that's focused on 10-year strategic planning and really looking even further beyond just a 5-year time horizon. And then the final thing that I would say that has helped us kind of really drive the work is doing it ourselves, is leadership through owning the things that we're expecting our supply partners to do. And so if we're talking with partners largely Asia-based, where we're advocating for expansions within a power purchasing agreement, making sure that we've put in place those power purchasing agreements in the markets that we're operating or working with them if we have a need within the regions that they're operating in.
Yeah, cool. So I'm mindful that Chris is here, and he is one of those suppliers a little deeper in the supply chain, and some of your biggest customers are the Walmart and the Nikes and the AB InBevs of the world. And so how do you, so just similar to what Scott and Virginia shared, Walmart's 90% of our impact on climate change also occurs in the supply chain. And so you've got 3 different very large organizations with their own climate goals and their own articulation of what they need to get done. You get a lot of customer interest and requests. So how are you prioritizing your own sustainability agenda with the needs of your customers? And can you give a practical example to help make it very real for this audience?
Sure. So unlike you guys, so we're a heavy manufacturer, so about 50% of our emissions are Scope 1 and Scope 2. But we still have the remaining 50% in our value chain in Scope 3. But obviously for us, both Nike and AB InBev and Walmart are customers of ours. And so, for us, when our customers ask us to do something, we typically say, okay, so what would you like us to do? You ask us to jump, how high can we jump? But really, because these are issues around sustainability, we all have essentially the same basic challenges. We're all faced with challenges around climate change. We're all faced with, and when I talk about sustainability, I talk about in the broad sense. We're all faced with challenges around the social aspects as well. Human rights, diversity, inclusion, et cetera. So as we look at our sustainability program, we ask ourselves, what do our stakeholders want us to do? We do the typical materiality assessment. And we say, okay, so for a company of our scope and scale, what are the key things that our stakeholders, our customers, investors, communities, our suppliers, what do they want us to do? And that has allowed us to create a very broad platform. Our current platform is People, Planet, Performance. We have 18 sustainability goals focused on that right now. And that nice broad platform also allows us to do what our customers want us to do. An example would be Project Gigaton. So Walmart's goal came out in 2017, is that right?
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right, yeah. 2017 to essentially avoid 1 billion tons of greenhouse gases and to report on that. Now, for the last 5 years, one thing I didn't mention, WestRock is a relatively young company. We were formed in 2015, the result of a merger between Midwest Vaco and Rock 10, companies with long histories. But we've been reporting out our emissions to CDP for the last 10 years. And so it was a very easy transition for us to say, okay, well, Walmart wants us to do this. We already have a goal around greenhouse gases. We already have reporting around greenhouse gases. And it was very easy to slip that in and just meet your requirements as well.
Yeah. Thank you. So Virginia, your whole mandate is about driving forward action on climate. So how do you... we're in a room of people that I at least hope, and if you are not of this, let me know and I will track you down, who believe climate change is real and requires urgent action. And so we don't always run into that once we get outside of this echo chamber. So how do you work with some of your bottlers and others in your business to help put climate on the agenda and make it real and make people move forward? How do you incent and encourage and mobilize that kind of action?
Yeah, so in our case, we're very fortunate that we're highly verticalized. So across 30% of our packaging is produced by ourselves. Across 55% of our malt is our own malt. And in addition to that, we actually have access to over 20,000 farmers across the world. So we're able to work directly with our farmers, and we see their challenges, right? So we see how yield decreases. We see how we've lost crops across the world due to drought or to climate stress, right? And then in terms of the other side, we bottle our own products, so that also makes it easy. But in terms of our own, Scopes 1 and 2. But when it comes to our suppliers, what we've realized is that we cannot do this on our own. So we've launched 2 big initiatives. The first one being the accelerator. Our second cohort, actually, the boot camp happened a week ago. So what we do is we put around 6-7 challenges across the world in terms of agriculture, because agriculture is a very big risk for us. Water scarcity is something that is impacted by climate change, and we're very concerned about water availability, access, and quality across the world. One of our goals is to provide water quality and access to all of our places where we have high-stressed watersheds. So we have across 40 places we have high-stressed water, and we're working very hard to be able to guarantee quality in that community. So we're going into our communities. So we launched those challenges, and we chose for the second cohort around 18 startups represented across the world that are basically, we're going to give them a grant, and we're going to pilot their solutions in our facilities. So we had a very amazing first cohort with great results, which not only provides sustainability initiatives, but it also makes business sense, right? So there was a very clear example of this company in Colombia that actually uses caustic soda replacement for water for bottle washers. So when you're washing bottles, basically you're using caustic soda, and that contaminates the water, right? Even if you're treating the water afterwards and we're giving it in drinking conditions, you still have the sludge that you have to treat it. So we not only found significant increases in water quality, but we also reduce water usage, we reduce energy usage, and we're also contributing to a startup that can enhance their business. And we do that. And then the other thing that we do to incentivize our supply chain is, since we know this is a collaborative effort, we launch a platform, I'm not going to say similar to Gigaton, but kind of inspired by Gigaton, called Eclipse. We did our first summit in November of last year. And what we called upon is workshop sessions where we talk about our sustainability issues, where we see what are our shared struggles, what are our shared risks, and what should we be working together on. And a very big one is, how do we create recycling infrastructure, for example, especially in glass. In some states in the United States, glass is not even regulated. People don't recycle glass because it's inconvenient, it's heavy, but producing glass is actually very energy intensive. So how do we create that infrastructure together and solve those issues together?
Great. I'm going to ask a few more questions, but I'd love to get some questions from the audience. So if you don't mind queuing up, if you've got some questions, we'll go out to you guys shortly. So Walmart, we're a really big retailer. We need to respond to customer interest and customer demand. You obviously have two iconic brands that are very customer facing. Yesterday during the session with the dude from UPS who's former Walmart, so it's really bad that I can't remember his name. He was talking about needing to balance where basically, and I'm going to summarize his point of view incorrectly, but essentially it was, we're responding to customer demand for products at my front door. And so there needs to be a bit of a conversation between the end user and the company providing a good or a service about responding to that need. So how do you think, are you seeing a change in customer behavior, perhaps from a US lens and then a global lens? And how do you think about embedding sustainability, or are you thinking about embedding sustainability in the brand?
I'll get started here. So from a Nike standpoint, our mission is to innovate and inspire for the athlete. Yeah. And the athlete is coming back and telling us that there are big concerns with the ability to continue to perform at an elite rate when you look at issues of warming temperatures, or even at an everyday athlete, around when you look at football in 2 days during the summer, or you look at the future of snowboarding and limiting of the seasons. And so what's coming back very loud and clear globally around the world to us is that there's a big concern and expectation and an ask around innovation on behalf of addressing climate change. So that's one big thing, and a plug on that within our Purpose website. There's been some really great work that's been done with the Climate Impact Lab together with Nike that talks about the impact of climate change on sport and what we're seeing through the athlete voice, and working with a number of the athletes that we're engaged with. And then on the consumer side, I think, and in particularly with a younger generation that's telling brands either address this or get out of the way, and demanding action, and that certainly is resonating back within the company around an expectation of this is part of a license to operate, is being able to talk about what you're doing on behalf of this issue that is critical, in our case to sport, but on behalf of the entire planet.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we talk about unstoppable trends. One of those unstoppable trends in terms of the consumer is purpose-driven brands, and it's something that consumers are demanding more and more every day, and that we have to solve in behalf of them, and we have to educate them. So it is our responsibility to be a part of the change, and we are seeing consumers every day demanding more sustainable products, demanding for companies to transition into renewables overall. So yeah, we are seeing it every day. We see it on the new brands that are striving and the new brands that are succeeding. Are those purpose-driven brands or brands that stand for something?
Yeah. And you recently did an ad, the Super Bowl ad?
This year's?
Yeah.
Yes. So we're very proud of that ad, actually. The Michelob Ultra Pure Gold. So, and this is a little bit of unsolicited publicity, but for every case that you buy of Michelob Ultra Pure Gold, you're going to be contributing to the conversion of kind of a 6 square foot, if I'm not wrong, of area that's going to become organic. So actually to transform land from regular to organic, it's very hard. Only across 1% of the land in the US used for harvesting is organic. So, and it takes years to actually convert it. So it's a very big initiative from the brand. It was actually the brand's idea. They came to us because this is something that the consumers are demanding. And Michelob Pure Gold is growing at incredible rates. It's not a secret that Michelob Ultra overall has been the fastest growing beer brand for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's great to give back to the community and be able to give the tools to the farmers to do so.
So Chris, I'm going to ask what is a very tough question, which is if there was one, I mean, we're among business school students and a handful of faculty, and the word innovation is thrown around with a lot of frequency, which is appreciated. But I guess one of my questions for you, and then the other folks can chime in, and I may have an idea. I don't know that I ever know how to answer this question, which is, where do we really need innovation? Is there an issue or a challenge that you are looking at through the lens of sustainability where, gosh, if we could just solve this one thing, we would really push an entire agenda forward?
That is a tough question.
Yeah. I'm hoping you have the answer, and
No,
then we can all step down.
I have a couple of thoughts. I don't know if I have an
Yeah.
answer. What Virginia and I were actually talking about in the wings out there was this whole issue of scope 3 and how difficult it is to understand and really get good, accurate data on your scope 3 emissions. So for us, chemicals, the chemicals that we use in the manufacture of paper, energy, and some of the emissions from the supply chain in our scope 3 emissions are very difficult for us to figure out. The big suppliers, it's no problem. We can work with Bruno and his folks at CDP and get that. But we're also a company that uses a renewable resource. We use trees, which is great. Helps to transition to the circular economy. If you think about renewable material, recyclable, potentially compostable, easily recyclable. But those trees are harvested by a supplier force that is massive, and it comes from a set of landowners that are massive. So how can we get better information on those typically small landowners, often small suppliers, on their contribution to climate change? That is the type of information that would be very, very useful to us.
For sure.
I'll build onto that. So scope 3, obviously a big space of interest. For those operating global supply chains, particularly if you look within the Asian marketplace, though, is a need for innovation around capability building. And really, particularly I'm talking about talent, right, that exists within the marketplace. And that continues to be, I think, a major gap. I think there hasn't been a big enough sustainability conversation in general around that as an issue of whether we've got the right training and the right kind of education that's taking place to ensure we've got the talent to be able to drive these programs. And it becomes a major issue the further back you get into the supply chain. That if you've got big brands that struggle to find the best talent and expertise within many of these critical sustainability issues, it certainly is going to be a challenge when you go further back in the supply chain. And I can tell multiple times where I've been with, working with suppliers where the willingness and interest to invest in things like on-site solar, or they're operating or putting in place wastewater programs, and they're just operated wrong. Or the solar panels are put on backwards or the wrong way, and it's just a lack of education that's extremely frustrating. I've got to say, talking to a room full that has many MBA students, there have been I think certain industrious MBA students from the States who have started to notice this within certain sectors and are beginning to go to Asia and find jobs and career opportunities providing that capability as a way both to broaden their experience and perhaps look at being able to network back into companies as well. But that is a key area, and I recognize sitting within academia right here, that is keen for additional focus.
Yeah. Anything to add?
Yeah. I will echo that, but I think it's also, I would say it's across the board. Yeah. Innovation is needed across the board. Like when we launch our accelerator, we always wish that other companies would join our accelerator because it's actually branded agnostically. It's called the Accelerator 100+. It doesn't have the name. It says powered by AB InBev in the bottom, But the idea and our initial idea was to bring other companies to join us, because if we're able to join forces, we're able to actually give more resources to innovation. You have all these amazing companies finding incredible solutions for things like water scarcity, for things like energy usage. So we found a solar heat energy down in Sweden. It's across the board. How do we actually make glass in a way that is more carbon friendly? Making glass is very energy intensive. It's not a secret to anyone. How do we actually educate the consumer to go back to returnable systems? Being returnable is inconvenient. So how do we actually get people comfortable with being inconvenient? How do we provide the solutions for them? I think we require innovation across the board. I think we are going the right direction, but I think much more effort is needed if we want to reach the UN SDGs.
Yeah. Just as a quick aside, it's one of my favorite Walmart stories, not because I enjoy the stories so much as I find it charming, but when we started working on climate many years ago, we worked with CDP to ask our suppliers to start reporting into CDP, and it just speaks to the need for innovation in talent, but also in using a common language and education. So when we first started asking people to report in, one of our suppliers said, I don't actually have to report in on my greenhouse gas emissions. And we said, why? And they said, well, we don't own greenhouses. And so there is a big learning curve. I think we're in a room of people who are really strong in your knowledge and your expertise on climate and scope 1, 2, and 3 and a science-based target, and that's amazing. But just remember, that is a unique skill that you are bringing to the table, and so we've got to simplify this and make it actionable for everyone to participate, because that's how we're going to solve it. And I will get off my soapbox. So maybe we will take, just in the interest of time, can we do 2 questions at once, and then we'll go to the crowd?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Claire Wittenberg from Kellogg School of Management. Virginia, you actually just hit on a part of my question, but it was pretty much about, you guys are all in with organizations that produce goods that consumers use, and a lot of the discussion has been about greening the supply chain for production, but not necessarily thinking about basically the end of life of the products that you're producing. And you talk about sort of me being able to return my beer bottle afterwards, and that might not be a prevalent practice here in the U.S., but like, how do you guys think and talk about your responsibility as a consumer-facing company about the actual end of life and what happens after your products are consumed?
Great. We'll hold on the answer and go over here.
Hi, I'm Ambika, also from Kellogg. I understand that you have to approach sustainability to reach your targets, both from cutting waste from existing processes and products, but also from just build in sustainability into new products and processes. And I'm curious about how you balance your resources between those 2 challenges, and also any specific like wins or losses from the building sustainability into your new products.
Great.
Thanks.
I think I'll take the first one because it was directly straight at me. I spaced out for a second. So
End of life.
End of life. Thank you. So we do measure end of life, and we are responsible for the end of life of our products. So we are working very closely both with our suppliers and our consumers to solve that issue, and we want kind of like a waste-free world, right? So one of the things that we're doing in Brazil and now in Colombia, we found a couple of startups that one is called Green Mining. They did really great on our first accelerator cohort. Is how do we collect glass across the country, and the same in Colombia. How do we collect glass across the country and incentivize glass recycling? So it's very, it's both a social and environmental initiative, because in those countries, recyclers are actually part of the community, and they're protected by constitutional law, and they're people with very few resources. So we're working on 2 fronts. One is providing them the resources to recycle, and how do we recycle correctly, and how do we work with our retailers to be able to sort out the recycling stuff. And then on the other side is how do we embed them and give them a financial identity, just like we do with our farmers. One of our goals is to have 100% of our farmers skill connected and financially empowered. So we're translating that initiative that we started on the farming side through the recycling side. So also, how do we give an identity to make sure that he has a decent standard of living so that he's incentivized to recycle more? So those are some of the solutions that we're looking into. And then we're obviously studying how do we bring refillable bottles back into the US in a very realistic way. Because if you have a program that is very expensive, it's only going to be a good program in urban cities. If you think about the Midwest, if you think about Texas, like having a program where you're charging the consumer money so that they can return their container, it's not going to be feasible. You need to have something that is makes business sense both for us, for the customer, the retailer, and for the consumer.
So I might take both of these kind of at the same
Great.
time and kind of navigate through it. So one is how we're organized to address the issue. And I don't think you address the back end without also focusing on the front end from a design side. And I mentioned that I'm in an embedded organization within manufacturing. We also have a VP of Sustainable Innovation with an embedded Sustainable Innovation team. We have a VP of Sustainable Product with a Sustainable Product team. I think where we're really accelerating and driving new work is the integration between those three teams working together to design strategies in a way that we hadn't been doing in the past, and that created certain challenges. But you've got to design the product first in terms of minimizing the amount of resources and impact that it has in the first place, but then also with the end-of-life circularity in mind. And we're working. It's a journey in terms of working through that. Nike, over the last year, gifted a Design for Circularity guidebook to be able to help inform how we're thinking about it and encouraging us working with others along that journey. Some of you may have seen the work that Nike's done on the back end around programs like Grind, where we've looked at product return, both on the footwear and apparel side, to be able to use that into new product, whether it's in sporting surfaces. You can go into a local Home Depot and see the product is used within carpet backing, within gym flooring, tiles, whole bunch of different product applications. We've also done within reuse programs, donation programs. Obviously, we're in an industry where a lot of the product can be, if treated right, reused again, and Nike's looking at how it continues to innovate it. Ultimately, reaching to where we want to go is a journey. Within kind of recycling, the challenge has always been around both having the collection mechanism to be able to capture the materials and the technology to be able to reuse those materials again. From a strategy standpoint, what we've been doing is, on my team is a dedicated entrepreneurial team that's focused on recycling. We run recycling centers in multiple locations across Asia that are taking materials out of factories, processing them, and then looking at how we use those materials back into our own supply chain first, but also developing business relationships with other companies to be able to use those materials. Now, ultimately, our strategy is, as we build markets for those materials and we continue to reduce the amount of waste in manufacturing, that goes over to the post-consumer side as we're working on the collection mechanism and also the design of debonding materials. Because the material coming out of a manufacturing facility is quite clean. It's a different situation when you have post-consumer material that's soiled, may have major contaminants, and particularly is challenging if it gets out of just the Nike supply chain. One of the best reasons people want our waste materials is because of our chemistry program, is that they know assurances around restricted substances have been managed through that material, and when we get other materials in there, it's difficult for us to use it because we don't know if the same standards have been held and we start to see contaminants. So there's a lot of issues to unlocking it, but I will say Nike is committed to working not just on the design side, but also on the end-of-life end as well toward ultimately unlocking this.
I'll just add a couple of quick things from a supplier side. So I report directly to our Chief Innovation Officer, so we look at innovation and sustainability being directly linked. We also have a very strong program in terms of working with our designers and our innovation and research folks on things like lightweighting, which most people wouldn't think about for a paper company. But basically what we're doing is we're using less fiber in the paper, so we're maintaining the same strength properties, the same quality properties, but using less fiber. Then on the recycling side, we have that recycling business, and we utilize a lot of insights from consumers. We actually do what we call a Packaging Matters study every year, and that study helps to both inform how we design packaging, but also how We can help our brands, branded customers, to figure out what consumers want, what draws them to a particular package, why they pick a particular box or a particular package over one over the other. All those things help to inform us and help to not only help us make Nike and AB InBev able to sell their packages better, but also helps us to make designs that are smaller, lighter, more efficient, but still have all that strength and that branding capability.
All right, we're going to try this again. We'll go here and then over here.
The two questions are really different.
I know. 3 is when you lose me usually, so.
Hi, my name is Maggie Edmonds, and I'm a student here at Darden. As each of you are working at industry giants in their own respects, what role do you think your company should be playing in changing the entire industry and impacting manufacturing across other companies and your competitors?
Hi, my name is Tess, and I'm also a student at Darden. My question is related, and I'll plug in and just say we've looked a lot at the spectrum of options that companies have to act on climate when there's a clear financial benefit, and then what they should be doing when there's not a clear financial incentive. So I would be curious, especially from Scott and Virginia, on your approach to these issues when maybe it comes at a financial cost.
Great.
I can answer your question and kind of embed into the other one. We're fortunate that we have tables and spaces where we can talk about sustainability as an industry. So we have the Beverage Industry Environmental Roundtable. We meet twice a year to talk about, a lot of it is to talk about standards, how we are reporting, but many of our footprints look pretty much the same. If you look at any beer company, the 3 big ones, and if you look at our carbon footprint, which is published in all the 3 web pages, it looks exactly the same. Like percentages might change a little bit, but they look exactly the same. And we do talk and share some of the best practices that are out there. Where do we want to go forward? The importance of packaging, for example, has been very recognized on all of the beverage industry. It makes up more than 1/3 of our emissions for all of us. And not only that, the consumer perception of having your brand found in some river. So we do work on not only standards, but how do we actually change the world together and shift the industry, and how are we going to achieve the targets that we all have set, which are also very similar targets. So I'm fortunate to say that I do believe that the industry as a whole, at least, is trying to push in the right direction. Sometimes there's a little bit of different views, especially on water. When you talk about water usage, water stewardship, there's some concepts that are coming over that we're not a fan of, but they're also part of the CEO water mandate, and we shape what that water mandate is going to look like. So yes, we work together to your point.
Yeah.
I'll touch both of these. On the first one around engage. So I think people may at times be surprised with how close actually we work with direct competitors. There's a ton of effort in the sustainability, particularly in pre-competitive space, standards and kind of license to operate issues where we know we can't do it alone and you need to push out further. There has been a growing recognition within the climate space that we need to be doing more work together, and that's where through the UN there's a climate fashion charter where within our direct industry we're working together with others. And then further, there's collaboration efforts like REBA, the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, where you're seeing kind of cross-industry come together. And I think Nike's been doing a lot of conversations around how do we also reach down into what we call the tier 4, the raw material, all the way back in the value chain together with the biggest brands, because we know within the biggest material spaces that we use, whether it's in polyester or cotton or rubber materials or leather and synthetic leathers, if you really look we don't have a ton of leverage. We don't actually buy back there. And like a number of food and beverage that purchase all the way back to say, the farm, we don't have that kind of direct relationship. And the only way that we can drive change where there's a ton of impact back there is through collaborative work. And so we're looking both where does it exist today and where there are opportunities that we can catalyze more work within the space. The cost issue, within this space is one that I do go back to the 3 priorities that I said that we focus on around setting strategy. And again, have a bit of an advantage within our industry given the depth of partner relationships, and that, again, these are partners that have often been with us for 30, 40 years. And so it's not transactional, meaning we can do long-term planning around investments within spaces like energy and carbon to be able to model that out, because, you know, increasingly when you look at the technology platforms that are available, they do model out, right? And so you know, you may be looking at opportunities that are on a longer time horizon instead of being your traditional 1 to 3 year return versus a deal that you've got to sign for 15 or 20 years. But they're really good deals and make total business sense. And so you know, I've talked about through my whole career the notion that waste is an efficiency and efficiency is cost. It's about figuring out who's paying that cost, why are they paying that cost, and how do we work that cost out? Because it's really the flip side of the productivity coin. In this case, we're talking carbon. We could be talking material waste or water use. So a lot of this can be baked into making the cost work, and then we come around and hit it on the resiliency side, right? And really in helping people understand, you know, we've got a big supply chain that's located on the coastlines of many Asian markets, which is this confluence of people in peril, right, as you look to the future in climate change. And so the realities of what that future looks like, being able to sit down and have those conversations around if we don't get moving and act around what those impacts are going to be, has been you know, a conversation that we've been able to accelerate pretty fast within the work and getting people to understand why they need to be investing in this space.
Very similar to Scott in Virginia, you know, we do a lot of work in associations, American Forest and Paper Association, Food Packaging Service Institute, those types of things. From the cost side, you know, publicly owned company, we do have a duty to our shareholders. But I would say from a paper company perspective, one of the benefits we have, if we think about, you know, carbon and energy, about 67% of the energy that we use at our virgin mills is renewable biomass. And we're doing more of that. But when you start to think about how can we, you know, make that shift from fossil fuels to either more renewable biomass or to cleaner fossil fuels like from coal to natural gas, then you're talking about huge capital investments. I mean, we're talking about tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. So when we look at things like that, obviously, you know, we want to do the right thing and we are focused on doing the right thing, but we try to stagger it when we, you know, in terms of, you know, when particular pieces of machinery are going to go out to make sure that we can make the right changes.
I'm going to go back to asking some questions. We'll try and get to the audience as time allows, but I'm mindful that we are in an era where urgent action is required, and the whole conversation is how do we move things forward faster, more quickly. I think one of the important questions to ask is what do we need to stop doing? When the whole frame is more, what do we stop doing to help really move things forward?
It'll sound cliched, but I think, you know, just stop waiting. We've been waiting for so long, waiting for somebody else to do something, waiting for the right time from a you know, cost perspective. Or whatever. So we need to just stop waiting, start doing more, and start collaborating more.
Yeah.
That was a good answer.
Glad I went first.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of my lens comes in from a supply chain perspective. One thing that comes to there are a ton of kind of operational efficiency programs, you know, where we come in and we do a training program. I can run through the litany of lists of NGOs and groups that continue to do those kind of ongoing programs. I'm not sure that at this point is the best investment, and often it's staying focused on kind of and I get what kind of low-hanging fruit within it without really attacking some of the bigger wedges that I recognize, back to the question on collaboration, probably can't be done by an individual company, but needs to be unlocked collectively. So when I look at some of the big challenges that we face within the marketplace, it's around how do we work together to advocate for the right policies that don't exist to be able to drive kind of the big areas where we need to be focused on, or how can we get cleaner energy solutions that probably aren't going to be addressed if you just are sitting there by yourself versus working collectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great answers. I was going to just say focus on where you can actually make a material impact. If you're talking about AB InBev or Nike or any other corporation, you see a lot of people kind of shooting everywhere or doing things that are not material, or you're not going to have a very big influence in changing that industry. So I do think it's important to understand what your material issues are. Not only that, understanding where you can actually make a significant impact and then act upon those. Because you're not going to solve all of the world's problem. You're not going to impact the 17 UN SDGs. Focus on the ones that you can actually make a change and you can actually influence change.
Okay. I got to look, so I'm going to do one final question because I know I'm standing between you and lunch, and I thank you for your patience. What is one tweetable, quotable bit of advice, which probably makes it harder to answer, but that you would give for MBAs as they're thinking about entering their careers and potentially entering into the sustainability sector?
Okay, I'll say this because I have a 27-year-old daughter, and so I've had a lot of conversations about what she wants to do. She's very interested in sustainability. But I would say there are a couple of things to think about. Number one, be a good listener. Too many people spend way too much time talking and figuring out an answer before they actually listen to what people say. Number two, have empathy. A lot of times as you are in the business world, you're working with people, you have to be able to collaborate, work on teams. Everybody has something going on in their lives, and so you have to be empathetic to understand how people are reacting to different things. It may have nothing to do with the project you're working on, it may have something to do with their life. And number three, patience. I've been in this business 26 years, and I've had a lot of great work, a lot of good exposure. Be patient. Good things will happen.
Great. Scott.
All right, I'm going to give you two tweets.
Okay.
It's one, don't be a jerk. And if you want to use more colorful language than that, you can fill it in. To getting things done in business, probably arguably in life, is through relationships. That's what's going to drive, and particularly within the sustainability space. And so being a good partner and working with others is the only way to be able to advance the work at the end of the day. I think that also requires you giving people a little space who are just coming into this area. I think we're quick to judge and jump on people and throw all our knowledge down around sustainability and put down ideas versus bringing them along on this journey with us, and that's going to be incredibly important. And third, and I can look in the audience and see a number of people that I worked with, not to mention Katherine in past lives, the sustainability community is actually pretty small at the end of the day, and you're going to run into the people over and over again, and people aren't going to want to see you, and it's going to make it incredibly awkward to come up on panels like this if you've been a real jerk.
I was not a jerk in a previous role.
Jerked along the way. And then because I'm Nike, I've got to say it, the other thing is just do it, right? It's like we need more doing and less talking. Right? And it's easy to throw ideas around and have great theories and talk about what people can do and what people aren't doing, but go do it. Get it done and then come back and talk and sit up here and talk about what you've done. Yeah. That's what's going to make a difference.
Yeah. I'll just say two things. One, and relating to Scope 3 emissions and everything that we were talking about, you can't track what you can't measure. So if you cannot measure what your impact is, you're not going to be able to track, and you're not going to be able to know what impact you're making to the world, to your organization, or to anything, and you're going to be kind of like shooting into the darkness without knowing what's going on. And then the other one, to Scott's point, yes, collaboration is key, and make sure that you're making those right connections and that you're working in a collaborative manner. Because just like Scott said, you never know when you will run into people again. Not that we've met before, but you'd be surprised when you go to panels and it's the same people, or you go to conferences, or if you're looking for a new opportunity or something in your personal career, or advice, or how to move forward with a project. The sustainability community is very small, and it's the same people over and over again. We want more people. I truly believe that sustainability should not even exist as a function in a department. It should be something that is embedded in every single function in the organization. I mean, my dream is that my function disappears and that you just have the finance people thinking about climate risk and not me having to tell them, hey, we're gonna run out of water and this is how much it's gonna cost us. Or the innovation or the marketing people just like kind of understanding that being premium doesn't mean that you're less sustainable and developing the right things. that's kind of like what I have to say.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking my panelists. It was a great discussion.